So now we continue with our ranged DPS picks for our main in Shadowlands. I already have a main for Shadowlands, but I'm just role-playing as one of you. Eager to know, eager to discover which spec they are going to play. Dubious, tentative, unsure of what to choose, unsure of what to pick. They want to do some Mythic Plus, but they want to do some raiding. They enjoy having AoE, but at the end of the day, they think single target is more important. So they are kind of undecided, don't really know what to do. But let's keep looking into all the ranged DPS specs and see what we can figure out. Down the line, in our reverse countdown of the alphabet, we have Destruction Warlock. Destruction Warlock is going here. I did rate Destruction Warlock pretty highly in Mythic Plus, but that doesn't mean they are not rated highly in raids at the same time. AoE in this case for Destruction means AoE, yes, but primarily cleave. Destruction Warlock has this thing called Havoc, which makes them very strong in cleave, very strong in burst. When it comes to cleaving, their AoE has improved in Shadowlands compared to BFA, which is not difficult when you don't have AoE, you know, going up from 0 outside of your Infernal. Now they are actually pretty decent, but still not close to actual AoE specs, so they are here mostly because of their cleave. They are in this part of the quadrant AoE team mostly because of their cleave. When it comes to the Raid versus Mythic Plus split, well, Destruction does bring a Soulstone to a Mythic Plus, it does bring Hellstones to a Mythic Plus. The value of portals in Raids is very high, it's very valuable. The value of cleave, the value of burst cleave, specifically just 2 targets. Other specs can cleave on 2 or 3 targets, sometimes 4. At that point start blurring the lines between what is cleave and what is AoE. But Destruction is very precise in this number. The number is 2. Your main target and your cleave target, and that's it. But that is very strong, what they can do with that. It is very powerful in raids and less powerful in Mythic Plus. The fact that their defensives are poor, their utility in Mythic Plus is poor. The availability of using Warlock portals properly in Mythic Plus is very limited beyond just skipping packs, as opposed to being crucial in several raid encounters. They do still have good burst they can use in Mythic Plus, but other classes can, you know. They're infernally strong, sure, but their key strength remains their cleave, remains their Chaos Bolt usage, which is stronger on fewer targets than many, which is what you will be facing in Mythic Plus, which is why Destruction stays closer to the raid side. And right after Destruction we go to Demonology. Demonology Warlock goes here. Demonology Warlock has very strong single target. It has good sustained single target and very strong burst single target when they line up all their cooldowns. Those cooldowns can also be lined up to do AoE, so it's not terrible in Mythic Plus. Problem is, when I rated them in Mythic Plus, I put them at the bottom because of their ramp-up time and their setup required. Not only that, but their setup is in the form of pets. Pets have a duration, pets need to stay alive before you can use your Tyrant. It's clunky. It's more difficult to use, it's more precise to use, particularly even harder when it comes to pugs. I mentioned, for example, in the healer video that it's harder to play Discipline with pugs because it requires more setup and a more coordinated group. Demonology is similar. You do want to have longer standing targets so that you can build up your rotation to summon all of your pets out for your cooldown or your big demonic tyrant. It's just something they can do more easily when it comes to raids. They do retain the similar bonuses of a Destruction Warlock that they can bring in a raid. Their portals, their gateway, their soulstone and their hellstones, so they're still there, they're still useful, but their damage profile just changes. They do have way more potential than Destruction when it comes to pure single target. They have also probably stronger AoE than Destruction, although not cleave, which is why Destruction is there and Demonology is here. The AoE is still fine. However, it takes too much time to ramp up to be good in Mythic Plus, as well as to be good in a raid when it comes to AoE. You have to remember how exactly AoEs play out in a raid encounter. Remember the AoE needed during Ajara, the AoE needed during Hivemind, the AoE needed during Carapace. Those are very small mobs dying very quickly. There is no time for sustained AoE, there is no time for sustained damage. It's still very bursty in a raid setting, so Demonology can shine more when we're talking about a single target damage profile. Now down the alphabet we have B, the B of Balanced Druid. Balanced Druid is going here. Why is Balanced Druid there? Balanced Druid is there because their AoE is poor. Their AoE is limited to 1 button, Starfall. The loss of being able to stack Starfall on top of each other is a big issue. I hope it's gonna be fixed sometime soon, because otherwise Balance is stuck to just refresh their Starfall and then use the splash damage of Starfire. And the splash damage of Starfire is awful. It's just really terrible. And it even goes against your logic of spending your eclipses in both lunar and solar. Your solar eclipse gives you nothing for AoE, not even a single buff, which is really poor in Mythic Plus. They also have no way to cleave properly. No talents are gonna give them strong cleave, no legendaries, like Elemental Shaman, are gonna give them a way to cleave. The single targets remain very strong, so why are they closer to Mythic Plus than they are to Raids, if they are strong in single target? Because their AoE is still good enough to be decent in a Mythic Plus encounter, while they have a system similar to a Subtlety Rogue. They can generate more astral power and dump it more on single target when it comes to AoE situations, similar to how a sub-rogue can use Shuriken Storm to do extra single target damage. This makes them more valuable in Mythic Plus than a spec that simply has strong single target. On top of that, there is all their utility. They have Typhoon, they have Innervate, they have Typhoon, they have Cyclone, they can have a stun, they have Ursol's Vortex, they have a Combat Rest, they have Stampeding Roar now. They have just a swathe of things they can use. They are very durable and very versatile. They can go into pair form to be even more versatile and more durable. Whereas when it comes to raids, it's pretty poor. When it comes to raids, they don't offer anything, any buffs or debuffs to the raid. They do have a combat rest, but in a raid, the number of combat rests is never very important. You will have them either way. And the tools they bring are not that important. They're not going to work most of the time in Mythic Plus when it comes to stuns and similar toolkit pieces, as opposed to, for example, a Gateway from a Warlock, or a Ring of Peace, or a Mass Grip, or a Grip. So they just have way more tools from Mythic Plus that makes them strong. They have strong single target. They do very well when you pair them with strong turbo cleave melee DPS specs like a Havok Demon Hunter and an Outlaw Rogue. You can top the group off with a strong single target spec with a lot of utility, which is where Balanced Druid shines. Fuck off. There's your BM. My BM, on the other hand, is going here. So Beast Mastery Hunter has a very solid uptime on their AoE, essentially endless. Just use multi-shot to keep up your Beast Cleave and you're set. Keep up your Barb Shot to add Stomp to make your pet use Stomp and you're set. You have a very nice every other pull cooldown in Bestial Wrath. Every couple minutes you can empower that with an extra cooldown. You do still retain quite a few tools as a hunter. You have your Binding Shot, you have your Stun in Intimidation, you still have Aspect of the Turtle, you have Feign Death that can cheese missiles and targeted attacks aimed at you. You're still extremely mobile, you can zap around and dodge stuff as a hunter. It is put at a opposite direction as marksmanship, due to marksmanship being stronger in single target and cleave, and it has better damage profile for raids, whereas BM Hunter has a more consistent and better damage profile when it comes to Mythic Plus. It is closer to AoE than it is to single target in the quadrants due to, well, BM Hunter being stronger in AoE and cleave than it is to single target. That's why it's there. So if you play a hunter and you have rightfully forgot survival exists and you just want to play a ranged DPS spec, the two specs are nicely divided between one another. You can choose to do two different things with those two specs. They're not too difficult to play. And at this point I resign myself in understanding people who want to play a hunter, but I guess you guys have your reasons. Second to last we have Arcane. Arcane is going to go over here. Arcane is in a situation somewhat similar to Fire. Arcane needs to scale a little bit, it's not ready to go right off the bat like Frost is. Arcane is also in a very similar situation to Demo, which is why it's in between Fire and Demo. Arcane has quite a hefty setup of cooldowns they have to use if they want to use their burst of damage. Hefty setup is always going to be better in a raid environment than it's going to be in a Mythic Plus environment. It's going to be easier to pull off. Targets are going to stay alive for longer. The loss of a few seconds of DPS due to GCDs is way less impactful than the actual burst you can pull off in several key windows. Think about the Shield of Moth or being able to kill the drones on Hivemind, properly dealing with all the adds and tentacles on Carapace in time, the adds on Raden. You can abuse the downtime in damage in a raid encounter to prep for the burst that you need, whereas in Mythic Plus the damage is kind of useful always. So Arcane is going to lose less by being in a raid environment than they would in a Mythic Plus environment. When it comes to damage profile, they still are more oriented towards single target. Even now that they have legendaries and talents that can make them stronger with their Arcane Missiles, their clear casting being buffed, their mana regen on Arcane Barrage can make them use amplification now, which makes Arcane Missiles even stronger. So they are more focused around single target now. Their AoE, Blizzard has tried to give you ways to AoE with Arcane Barrage, extra damage on your Touch of the Magi for splash damage around the target. At the end of the day, if you really want big AoE as an Arcane, you're still forced to go into melee range and spam Arcane Explosion. Their single target is still their focus right now, and that's why they are in this position on the compass. Finally, we are finishing off with Affliction. Affliction probably pissed off because he thought he would have been first. Too bad I turned the alphabet upside down. So where am I putting Affliction now? Affliction is going here. So much of a wait time for Affliction just to move that much. Affliction has changed a bit in Shadowlands. They have a much easier time at setting up a good damage profile for AoE. Otherwise, they would have gone all the way. They would have gone all the way to the bottom to be much more specifically around raids and single target. But their AoE now is solid. The crutch of Affliction when it came to AoE, and as a result when it came to Mythic Plus, was the fact that they were a Demolock. It took them too much time to set stuff up. In their case, it wasn't about strong cooldowns or GCDs, it was more about setting up all the dots on all the targets and trying to do damage. There just wasn't enough time. Now, between the Still There, Seed of Corruption to spread corruption, between the Vile Taint to spread a second DOT, and Impending Catastrophe Covenant ability to spread a third DOT, the new ability they have been given to dump their Soul Shards, Malefic Rapture, can actually do proper, solid AoE damage. They still lack a significant burst talent, their Dark Glare is still stronger for single target, they still don't have that oomph that allows them to do some serious Mythic Plus damage, which is why they're still more focused around raiding single target and cleaving with dots, dot cleaving, etc, etc. But I didn't feel like putting them too far away from the Mythic Plus quadrant or away from the AoE quadrant, because they have definitely improved compared to BFA. We are no longer in this super tight niche of being a single target spec or being able to be employed in a raid encounter that has severe dot cleave available to you. Now you are more versatile than you were before. Right now, I'm even willing to say that Affliction is more versatile than Destruction when it comes to Warlock specs. You still retain the same things of Destruction when it comes to Soulstone, when it comes to Hellstone, when it comes to Gateways. Oh, that's still there. And you also have a very strong Execute phase, if you want to, with Decimating Bolt, with your Drain Soul talent, the only Warlock to have a Drain Soul for extra Execute damage. It makes you even more prevalent in raid encounters. You can see there are quite a few varied specs that can be sort of in between multiple roles. Affliction Warlock, Elemental Shaman, Frost Mage, Destruction Warlock, Shadow Priest can all do multiple things. Either they can do AoE or single target, or they can both be good in raids or Mythic Plus. There are a few more one-dimensional specs right now. There's Demonology Warlock, Arcane Mage, Fire Mage are more on the straightforward side of things, but there's gonna be time to improve, specifically for Fire Mage. So this is going to be the outlook of the Ranged DPS specs. Now, if you have a 7D chess brain, you could go and cross-reference this with the fun ranking and figure out for yourself which one you want to play. Maybe I wanted an AoE-centric spec that was also fun. Maybe I wanted a single target-centric spec that was simple. Maybe I wanted a little bit of everything. And hopefully you can find a spec that is good for you, or that intrigues you to try out. So with this done, I leave you guys. The next video is gonna be about the tanks and healers, since I haven't done that one yet. So in the meantime, you guys tell me what you're planning to play, and particularly if there is a spec you're really afraid is gonna be shit and left in the dust, and you will have wasted your main choice for nothing. And while you tell me that, I'm gonna go and wash my car. See you soon, guys.